S&P trading at 4444, making a higher high on the weekly already. We have a lot to go over. Hey guys, I'm not going to be doing an introduction as I usually do for the first of this video. There's a lot to get through. I wanted to watch the futures market open before I did this, so there's a lot to dive into. So let's just jump right into it. So let's just talk about today in ES before we get into some of these names that we need to watch and what we have to watch tomorrow, because there's a little bit of a divergence going on here. There's a trend and then there's a counter trend. So we're going to jump right into it. So we can see the wicks right here, and we talked about these in the Saturday video, and I appreciate all your comments and sharing that video. I actually got a couple emails from people saying thank you. We were able to find you and worked out pretty well. So I do appreciate that. It actually helped somebody greatly. It kept somebody out of harm's way. So I do appreciate that. You'd be surprised the amount of comments I get for people that share it. So here's your counter trend. And one thing that we know about this particular level right here, or this reversal, that I should say, is that that is a bearish engulfing. We could see this portion, I'll draw it back here, we could see this portion of the quote counter trend. Why is that the counter trend? Because we've had a trend of this entire market where we have done what? Gone nothing but go up and go up since October, quite frankly. And we were talking about that for those that follow us on, or follow me on Discord. Right there, that was a possibility that this could actually be the low, and it was just the print of the CPI, and there's a positive divergence here as well, but we're not going to get into that tonight. What we're going to do is just focus on a couple key things. Number one, from 23 on, from the year of 2023, and we just go like this, there's your trend. It is clear as day you are in an uptrend. You now have what we refer to as the counter trend, which is here. This is where everybody is going to call the top. You don't call tops just like you don't call bottoms. Even when I said it down here, I was pretty clear about it that maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Just because you have that positive divergence that happened down here in the RSI doesn't mean it is. Okay, so now we have this trend, and then we have that followed by this counter trend. All right, so now we know where we're at and we know what we need to be paying attention to. Before we drill into this and get into the weekly, the one thing that I did stress this week is that we had no leadership. Well, not a lot's really changed there, but tech is starting to become a little bit of a leader. Now I'll walk you through it, what we're saying. But the up, the down, and then you have the two wicks right here. All right, so let's drill into these wicks and before we drill into the hourly and then overlay this with the weekly. There's a couple things to realize here that are going on. Number one thing that we must realize about this particular pattern, this could be really nasty and really bearish. You need to clear the top of that bar. The top of this bar right here needs to be cleared. Let's get you a level so that you can watch it tomorrow. Okay, 44.85. You're going to note that that 44.85 is going to tie you in with what? It's going to tie you directly in with our 22.55 cross. If you're new here, you don't know this, but for those that already know, we use a what? We use a 22, we use a 55, and we use a 12. And the colors are relatively simple here, but you should be able to determine just by the movement which is which. So you have to watch this level up here. It's actually a little bit lower. These wicks are of most interest, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But what I find fascinating is this is the counter trend, right? So now here's our counter trend, and we're staying in this, but now we're having trouble right here in this area. What is that telling us? That we're having trouble in this area? Well, it's telling us that we might actually respect this little area right in here. Now, are we going to? I have no idea, but I can tell you that wicks are price rejection. I can say that with certainty. So you start going through, what can I say with certainty? Well, I can say wicks are price rejection. All right, what else can we say with certainty? We can say, well, we tried to break here and we didn't, but we held here twice. Okay, we can say that with certainty. We bounced here twice and we held there. All right, we reversed off what? If you can't tell, that's a 55. And let me get my little drawing tool right here. And so that's our 55 right there. And you can see this very clearly. What did we do? Got to the top of it. You can see why this is the control bar. You can see why that's the issue. You can see why that's the issue right there as well. Okay, control bar down, bearish engulfing. 1, 2, 3. So most likely you're going to test this area. Now the question is, do we flip there or not? And the answer is nobody knows. What we do know are a couple things. Number one, the RSI is approaching the 50. If we flip the 50, we can get to a period where we start having outperformance, not underperformance. Very simply, we can go up instead of going down to make it sound clearer. Right? If you note, and I love when people say that this doesn't work, but if you note, that's where we broke the 50. It's not rocket science, guys. If you're not using this, you're leaving edge on the table. Learn how to use it. It's just like a hammer. So in some people's hands, it's very, very impressive. In my hands, I'm lucky to hang a picture. So we have these wicks down here that are holding. We're holding in here. The RSI is trying to get over 50. We have some other things that are glaring. Let's draw into the weekly first. And what we can see is that weekly is eating up into this wick already. It's eating into that wick, and that's what you want to see. Now, it's day one, okay? We're through 20% of the week, so let's not do a victory lap yet. But you're going into JOLTS jobs and got some data this week. I don't really think the data is going to matter a whole heck of a lot unless it's extreme, quite frankly. You know, one thing I like to do that everybody knows is just refer to that stool and the three legs of that stool. Macro has a place. Technicals has a very strong place after today, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you were on the pre-market call or you listened to Saturday, there were 2 points that I hammered home that I think were very important. Number one was this level right here and how we held. You can see on the ES how you held this level very clearly. All right, it's not rocket science. Here's the level, okay? Tested 3, 4, 5 times, didn't break. Here's where this entire pattern since this time, which is July 27th. If you watched the video from 2 weeks ago, we know what happened on July 27th. Actually, it was about 3 weeks ago. Month's flying, isn't it? So what happened here? Well, Japan came out and said, by the way, we're going to let yields go a little bit higher, which is the effective way of doing what? Raising rates. Raising rates, it unwinds the 10-year trade. In other words, you're selling Japanese bonds and you're buying 10-year bonds. That started to get unwound here. It's why yield never changed. It's why the dollar's never been lower. It's why the market's never been higher, period. That is the one leg of the stool that we talked about, the macro leg. All right, so we know that. And then we talked, of course, about what? We talked right here about this level, and we talked about this left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and coming across. All right, so now we know that we've broken up here. We know we have a head and shoulders. We talked about that for weeks. And what else did we have? We had this whole area doing what? What did this whole area do? Okay, this whole area hit lower highs and lower lows the entire way down. The entire way down, that's what it did, right? I mean, we could see it. Once it cracked and you broke our neckline right in here, what did it do? Here, all the way down. I mean, you could see it. Even when it tried and looked like it was going to, it was just complete matumboed right there. And then what do? We break. Looks like we're going to hold, not today, again, until we got to here, 43.68. We're going to call it 43.65 to make it simple. Then we break on the 21st. We hold, we rally. We're, of course, going to make a new low. What do? We do not make a new low. You need to watch 43.68.50. You need to watch 44.83. It's really that simple right now. That's what you have to watch. Now, there's a lot of different indicators that I use to determine which way we're leading. I'm going to use 2 right now. Now, I'm going to leave these levels in. The very first thing I'm going to use is RSI. And I want to point out the obvious again. Oversold, overbought. The one thing I went through this week with everybody is that the oversold, overboughts are happening a lot faster. That usually leads to a change in trend. And I'm getting to something here, and it's really important that you get this, okay? You're no longer oversold, and you're in the middle of the range. So you're really in no man's land, but we have leaders, and those leaders are kind of giving us an indication on what's going to happen, or what may happen, I should say. And here's the higher high. So we have nothing until we clear this higher high. This higher high stopped exactly where the 22.55 cross was, period. It's not a question. It's very clear why we stopped, where we stopped. It's not debatable, right? We know with certainty why we're there. We know we didn't make new lows. These are the things we know. All right, higher high, and then we collapsed. That was it. It's pretty clear. Tries to rally, getting back overbought. We're not overbought yet. When you get over and undercut is when you want to get out of the way. We're not over yet. So we could have more of a push. What makes the most sense here is to see something like this. A push up to that 22.55 and then a rolling and maybe a back test or through. How that plays out, I don't know. Before we get into any more detail on this, I will tell you that I get asked a lot to follow up on these things, so I'm going to follow up this evening. But again, this is something that any one of you could follow up on because this is listed. And we're really in one big macro trade, so I'm trying to stick with this, but there are some names that we should go over and just take a look at. So one of the key things here is that stocks above the 200-day moving average, you never want to buy them when they're below 50. Okay? This is a leading indicator to me. I am back above 50 today. So I broke 50, I'm back above 50. This is exactly what we needed to see. Now, there's a couple other things that we needed to see. And here's the symbol on this, and anyone can look it up. I do listen to your comments when you say, please follow up on things. When you talked about doing the option video, I do listen and I do respond to everybody. It just takes me a little longer because it's a one-man shop. So if we look here and we focus on this level, we're still not over. Remember, we did this on Saturday. This is the level. If we don't clear this, I don't care that we're above the 200. Right? We went through this. We're going to do it again real quick here. So right here, you can see the death cross. I don't care if we're above the 200. To me, it's still resistance. And until you make a higher high and I get a golden cross, the 200 is still resistance. I don't see any great push over. I see us over and them dangling a carrot saying, come on in, the water's fine. But I don't see us getting through this. I don't see any big massive push over. And I think that's a very important distinction. There's another important thing that we should probably go over. Look at the 10-year. Look how it backed off today. You had auctions today at 11 on the bond market. Right? If that was weak, this would have broken out today. This did not break out today. Everybody's going on the assumption that this is a foregone conclusion, that we're at a top and it's very clear. They are a lot smarter than I am. It's going to take a lot more to convince me that this is all over when we have companies that are literally trillion-dollar companies that are doubling their earnings and people want to call it a fad. So it's going to take a lot more to convince me that this is over. We're going to have to really break out. We're going to have to say it. But that does not mean, before we go further into names, we should start here so you get this. That does not mean that we can't rally back up. Here's your trend. We could see the trend. All right, so we can all see that trend. That trend is up. Trend changes to what? Counter trend. And now we're reversing. Not only reversing, this morning we were talking about this pre-market. We're forming a flag, and then we get over the PAL statement. And all of a sudden, you have a completely different looking market because now you have some kind of base in here, don't you? And that's important. So now you have some kind of base in here. So now we're not, see, I don't really want this. Like, that's not something I can hang my hat on. That's like something you buy and then you wonder how you just got, annihilated. But if you start having some kind of base coming across, that's something that we can pay attention to. That's something that we can benefit from. And that's what we want to focus on. All right, so if we understand that, you're going to understand that we are in the same exact boat as we are here. I can't really, from the way that I trade, I can't really go crazy with longs for longer term swing trades until the Nasdaq is above the 55. It's just because I know that I don't have institutional support till I'm above it. This wick, this bar, everything in here, you cannot get a clearer signal you just cannot get a clearer signal than these levels. You just can't. I mean, this is the level I would focus on right here. 515 to 6850. That's what I would focus on. Now, what else do you have going on? Your RSI is trying to cross the 50 line. You can use it if you want or not use it. I use it, do it that what you will. I think it's something that is definitely worth paying attention to. But you can see how we held on the hourly. Look at this on the weekly very quickly. And I want to keep these weekday videos shorter so that you can watch them and digest them and go from there. You still broke the 70. And what did I say on Saturday? It's all fun and games until we cross back over the 70 again, which we've done before for long periods of time. Again, I do read your comments and I do want to follow up on what you are asking about. So one of the questions I got a lot of comments on was rate of change. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? We were only up 50 basis points today on NQ. Look at the rate of change. You're back to positive. I just want to be real clear about this so that you get this. This is where we broke right here on rate of change and we're negative. And that ties in right here, doesn't it? This is where we're flipping positive. Are we going to stay positive? I don't know. Nobody knows the answer to this. All I can tell you is what's happening now. And what's happening now is going to affect your trades tomorrow, period. If you have a positive rate of change, okay, I'm not the only person that looks at this, right? I'm not the only person that learned how to trade like this, right? You have people that are sitting on institutional desks that are watching this because it determines order flow. I can do a whole video on this and how this thing's actually calculated. But when you see this and you go positive, you want to pay attention. As a trader, you're looking for changes that can tell you what's going to happen. This can tell you that you're probably going higher. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to matumbo right up here and reject, right? Okay, that could easily happen. But we know where the dollar is. We're watching the VIX implode. Let's get rid of this. All right, and I always watch Bitcoin to see if it's stabilizing. It's stabilizing. Now let's talk about some names real quick. Are important. Number one, NVIDIA. I don't care that it's down right now. What I look at are things like this, where, let's clean all this off. When I have tweezer bottoms like this, and all the bars are up here, I have a sell down, and then I close at the high, and I have a hammer up here. You need to pay attention to this. Because watch this. Look where you can't break it. You can't break the 22. What is the 22? Who's in charge, the bulls or the bears? If you've been watching these videos for a long enough time, you already know the answer. Bulls are in charge. The bulls are basically saying, yeah, we're here, man. Get used to us. Like, we're not going anywhere. And they are buying and they are buying. I'm getting a 12-22 cross with a hammer right here. Okay, and I'm supposed to worry about this because I dropped 6% after being up 250% on the year? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it is very clear what's going on here. Wicks are what? Price rejection. We all know this. We've gone through it a million times. So we know this. Could it roll? Could it not work? You want me to say it again? Yeah, it could. But until I break this, okay, and you are getting some huge opportunities in the market, huge, because of the volatility that's out there now. You no longer have 1.7 trillion. You no longer have zero margin interest rates. It is creating an excellent trading environment. Look at Tesla today, right? Look where we ran to. It's a perfect short if you know your levels. Okay, again, I used a 12, a 22, a 55. I came in short, I stayed short. When it came back down, I covered, and that was pretty much it. We had people in the community that actually shorted up here. But if I'm short or long something and it opens against me, I never average to a loser, ever. And you can just listen to that over and over again. Never. I just don't do it. So even though I knew that this was like the trade, I even said it in the room, like if I was going to do this trade, this is where you do it. I mean, it was absolutely glaring where it stopped. Look at that on the 1 minute chart. It was just absolutely glaring. So I use a 12, a 22, okay? And then the other thing that people were trading off of, and you most certainly should do this as well, but just look at this VWAP. I mean, no one's gonna ring a bell, guys. Rejection, rejection, rejection. What are wicks? Wicks are price rejection, right? So if you know that wicks are price rejection, and you have a VWAP, and you can't get over V, you think that's something you might want to pay attention to. Can't stay over VWAP. Can't stay over VWAP. I mean, it doesn't really get much easier, guys, when you start looking at this during the day. It's always easier after hours, isn't it? When you go back and look at a chart. It's in the heat of things that you don't want to do it because you tie your ego to it. So it's funny, but it is what it is. But now you're making these higher highs. I still have a short position. I have a short bias in this, and I'm going into tonight with puts. Why? I couldn't even stomach getting back up here. Okay, versus how some of these others moved. I mean, 2% on NVIDIA today, 2% on Meta today. You start going through these XPEV, these kinds of names. Don't rule these out yet, guys. I just want to touch base on a couple names here that I still like that I went over this Saturday. Usually what happens is China tells banks to buy stocks. China banks balk at buying stocks. Someone makes a phone call and reiterates their strong insistence that China banks buy stocks, and they start going higher. So you're starting to develop some kind of dragonfly right here on XPEV. This would be the name I would look at solely because of what we saw with the stake from VW. I think it's an important name to watch. CVNA, this is one we traded today, came right back down to this gap fill, held, broke out of this base, which was really nice. And just gave us a real nice trade. I think we were up like $1.50. And you had a choice whether or not you want to hold it overnight or not. But there's some other names we should get into now. I don't really know what people expected HE to do here. Did they just expect them to roll over? Of course they're going to say that we didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying that they did, but this is going to take years. So I actually began the short again today. What I'm looking for now is to get this to go higher. If it goes higher, right? So what I'll do with something like this, I know that this can go against me, so I'll never really have a full position. Okay, so that if I don't have a full position, I'm not really averaging into a loser. It's a little complicated, but not really. So like if I'm into a third of a position or a half position here, if it gets up to here, and then I put the full position on, and it's up here, then if I got to here, I can't add. Right? So like, I know that this can go against me big time because everybody's shorted, but I just don't see how this is going to be in existence, especially with them cutting their dividend. I mean, they cut their dividend. You now own a utility stock that's going to be sued for $5.5 billion, and they don't have a dividend. I mean, I can't imagine the conversation those PMs are having. You're going to want to watch names like Carvana, a firm, I really like this name. Shook me out a little bit today on an initial starting position. I'd watch this hammer tomorrow. If you flip that hammer, you want to pay attention to it. If you look at the absolute volume in that name, this is all-time high volume on that name. It is just absolutely staggering, the volume that you had there. definitely things that you want to watch. But that's really what I would focus on right now, guys. I would focus on these kinds of names. I would not be chasing things. I'd let this all settle down. It was more important for me to go through the indexes tonight. And please comment on that. Sometimes it's more important for me to go through the indexes so you guys have a roadmap for tomorrow. You can see the SOXX in here, and I do want to just make sure that you guys get this. Okay? You have no leadership still. There's still no leadership. I think, there I go again thinking, I think that this is trying to reclaim leadership. I think XLK is trying to reclaim leadership. See how the 12's going sideways, and here's the 22 and the 55? And now I've got a dragonfly right there, and the RSI is trying to get above 50. So I think you're getting leadership there, but we'll see. Some people think it's going to be XLE. I don't know, it doesn't really look half bad today, does it? So that might be it as well. But we'll see how tomorrow plays out, see how we respond to the economic data. That's it.